Hi, so for the hashing question, we're now going to do a little bit of intro on what makes a valid hash function and what makes a good hash function. So validity is really determined by two things, determinism and consistency. Determinism is referring to whether if you have two objects that are equal, and this is equality using the dot equals method, not the double equal sign, they're always going to be hashed to the same hash value. So in other words, objects that are the same are going to be hashed to the same hash value. Makes sense. Consistency refers to the same object having the same hash value no matter when you hashed it, right? So for example, let's say, also no matter how many times the hash function is called. So for example, let's say that I decide to hash an object at noon, okay? And I get a certain hash value. And then I decide to hash this object again at 2 p.m. and I get another hash value. Consistency requires that these two different hash values from noon and from 2 p.m. are going to be the same, okay? If they're not the same, then that means there's something wrong with your hash function, and it is no longer a valid hash function, it is now invalid. A good hash function builds on top of these two validity criteria. So one way that we can say that it's good is if it spreads hash values all over the map as evenly as possible so that it minimizes the number of collisions. Remember, collisions is bad, right? We don't want to keep on increasing the size of each of our buckets because that's going to lead to potentially bigger and bigger runtimes. And so at some point, if we keep on adding a lot of key value pairs into our hash map, right, it's going to result in a lot of collisions inevitably. And so at that point, our only solution is just to resize. And resizing is, I think, at a different point in this mini lecture from lab 16. But back to what makes a hash function good, it should also be relatively quick to compute. So if I have like a double or triple for loop in my hash function, that's probably not a good hash function. And then it should not rely on non-deterministic values. In other words, values that can change over time. A great example of this is if you're using some random value to decide a hash value, right? This random value is not guaranteed to produce the same value every time you call it. And so that would result in actually an invalid hashing function.